Okay, now this is the third part of the presentation that I'm working with you. Now, this is, as I've already said to you, you can download the format for chapter 3, classwork number 3. It deals with the entire adjusting process. We'll be doing journal entries, we'll be doing the worksheet, and finally, we'll be preparing an adjusted trial balance. That's what you're expected to do as a part of the homework for this chapter. So now let's read the question that you're required. First is that Dickens Company is a small editorial services company owned and operated by Monica Baker. On October 31st, 2014, the end of the current year, Dickens Company's accounting clerk prepared the unadjusted trial balance shown below, and we're given a trial balance, and then we are given additional data. The data needed to determine year-end adjustments are as follows. And first adjustment we are given is unexpired insurance at October 31st is 5,400. Now, here on the trial balance, unadjusted trial balance, you can see a prepaid insurance is 7,200. So still 500 is remaining as unexpired. That would mean that the difference between 7,200 and 5,800, 400, that's 1,800 would have expired. So any prepaid insurance that has expired will be debited to insurance expense. So let's find out insurance expense, and will be credited to prepaid insurance. So that is how we'll be handling that first part of the problem. Now the second part of the problem is supplies on hand is 375. So let's find out what is the supplies in the trial balance. Supplies in the trial balance is 1,980, as you can see. So the 1,980 minus whatever is remaining now, that is 375, will give us an amount of 1,605 worth of supplies have been used by us. So that should be supply expense. So supply expense and credited to supplies account. That's how we handle the B part. Now let's go and see the C part. C part is depreciation of building for the year is 6,000. So for depreciation, expense would be debited whenever we have a depreciation expense building, and accumulated depreciation will be credited. So let's find out accumulated depreciation for building, and the amount is given to you directly, 6,000. So we'll put 6,000 here. Okay, now next thing that we are going to do is we are going to check number D. It says depreciation of equipment for the year is 3,000. So the journal is same, depreciation expense. Only thing that you do is equipment, and then accumulated depreciation and equipment amount is given to you straightforward, 3,000 and 3,000. Now, sometimes that depreciation expense would be given as a percentage of an asset. So if you are told, let's say 30%, 20% of building would be depreciated, so you'll apply 150,000, 250 times 20%, whatever amount you come up with, that will be considered as depreciation expense if you are given that way. In this case, we are given straight away. Number E is rent earned at October 31st, 1,350. So rent earned 1,300, and rent unearned is 1,350. So now we have to find what is the rent earned. Unearned rent in the trial balance is given to as 6,750. 6,750. Now it is unearned as 1,350. So the difference is 5,400. That is the earned amount. Now sometimes in academic problems they will try to twist the language, saying that rent earned during October was 5,400. So in that case, you don't have to subtract from the given balances. You straight away take that amount because that's what we are interested in. So unearned rent would be debited and the rent revenue would be credited. So this is unearned rent and rent revenue would be credited, or rent earned would rent revenue rent revenue, here it is, rent revenue is credited. That's number E. Number F is accrued salaries and wages. So we'll have to, accrued means as soon as you see that we have not paid that much, so that should be accrued salaries and wages would be debited to the salaries and wages expense and then credited to salaries and wages payable if it is accrued. Now number G is fees earned but unbilled. So that means we have earned that. So therefore it should be debited to accounts receivable because you have not received the money, and it would be credited to fees earned because you have earned that money, and it's a revenue for us. So revenues increase are credited. So that's how we will be doing the journal entry. So we have taken care of the journal entries. Now, next thing is the instruction. Let's read this. It says number one, journalize adjusting entries using the following additional accounts: salaries and wages payable, rent revenue, insurance expense, depreciation expense, building depreciation, equipment and supply expense. Now, while preparing a worksheet, we need to keep that in mind. So let us determine the balance of the amounts affected by adjusting entries and prepare and adjusting. So to determine what are the balances, what you're going to do is we're going to do the worksheet. Now, while doing the worksheet, this is the worksheet format. This is the unadjusted trial balance. And then adjustment, you have two columns for debit and credit for trial balance, unadjusted trial balance, sorry. And adjustment, debit and credit, two columns. And then finally is the adjusted trial balance. So this is the typical format of a worksheet. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring those um, journal side by side so that we know we can include those in the worksheet. So that is what I'm going to do. So let's take those journal entries. Now in this case, the first journal entry that I did was uh, debit to insurance expense. Now I don't see an insurance expense here in the list. This is the unadjusted trial balance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add down here as insurance expense. Now that is a debit of 1,800. So I'm going to write A here and write 1,800 in the debit column in the adjusted. And then prepaid insurance was credited. So prepaid insurance is already there. So that's why what I'm doing is I'm going to the credit side of the adjusted column and writing A and 1,800. So that is taken care of. The first one is taken care of. Now the next one is supply expense. Do you have a supply expense? I don't see a supply expense, so we're going to add that supplies expense, and that would be number B, and it is a debit to supply expense 1605, and then a credit to supply. So therefore let us find out the supplies here. It is supply, so that would be on the credit side. So this would be 1605. So I'm crediting the supplies account and putting it in the worksheet on the credit side of that adjustment. Next is the depreciation for building. So depreciation expense building. That is number C item and a debit to that. So this is 6,000. And we have to find the accumulated depreciation. Here it is, and put it on the credit side because accumulated depreciation is a credit item of 6,000. Then what we do is we take the depreciation expense for equipment. So depreciation expense for equipment, and that is number D, and I'll write D here, and 3,000. That is a debit to the depreciation expense. And accumulated depreciation equipment is here. I'm going to write on the credit side D, and the amount is 3,000 because I've credited accumulated depreciation. And unearned rent is a debit. Unearned rent would be already existing here, so let's write it in the debit, and write E in that small column, 5,400. And next is the rent revenue. Rent revenue is, if it is there, it's all right. If it is not there, then we'll be putting that down here. Rent revenue. Okay, rent revenue is credit, so I'll be crediting and writing E, and the amount is 5,400. Next one is the salaries and wages expense. So salaries and wages expense. Now there's already there, so I don't need to create another one. Salary, but I don't have the payable one, so I'll put that payable here. Salary is an expense payable. Expense is here, so I'm going to put it as a debit to it. Number F, debit of 2,900, and payable is a credit. So let's write F and 2,900. Okay, then accounts receivable, it is already there. So let's find out the accounts receivable. It is here. And accounts receivable was debited, so that's why accounts receivable I'll write in the debit column. That will be G, and the amount is 18,600. And next is fees earned. Fees earned is already existing, so that will be mm, credit. So G is 18,600. Okay, so we have entered all our journal entries in the worksheet. Now what we are going to do is we are going to complete that worksheet. Remember, this is very important. While we are doing the adjusted trial balance, what we would do is we would take the starting figure, and if there is a, if supposing if the starting figure is a debit and the adjustment is debit, add the two figures and write in the debit column. If the starting figure is supposing a debit, but the adjustment is a credit, then what you need to do is subtract the two and write in the column whichever is higher. Supposing prepaid insurance is 7,200 debit and a credit is 1,800, so the higher amount is in the debit, so therefore I'll be writing in the debit column with the difference between the two amounts. So that is how we calculate the adjusted trial balance amount. For cash, there is no adjustment, so 7,500 was a debit, and in the adjusted trial balance also it will be a debit of 7,500. For accounts receivable, now for accounts receivable, your balance will be 38,400 plus 18,600 because it's a debit, so that's why I'm adding. The new balance will be 57,000. Now, prepaid insurance was a debit of 7,200 and a minus credit of 1,800, so therefore a debit of 5,400. In case of a supplies, again it's the same thing. Debit of 1980 and adjustment was a credit of 1605. Therefore, net amount will be a debit of 375. And land, there is no other adjustment, so we're going to take the same amount. Building, there is no other adjustment, so we're going to take the same amount. Accumulated depreciation, it is a credit item, and started with a credit, so 87,550 plus adjustment credit of 6,000 will give 93,550. Equipment, again there is no adjustment, so I'm going to take the 135,300 to the fifth, the debit column in the adjusted trial balance. Accumulated depreciation is a credit account, 97,950 plus 3,000 more, so that will give you 1,950. And accounts payable is no adjustment, it has no adjustment. 12,150 was the amount, so we are going to take it to the credit column. And unearned rent, of course, is a credit account, and as you can see, we had a credit of 6,750 but a debit in the adjustment, so we'll be subtracting the two, and the credit is more, so that's why I'll be writing the net amount of 1,350 on the credit column. And then capital account is 221,000 on the credit column, no adjustments. Drawings, no adjustments. Debit column 15,000, so I'll be writing 15,000 as such. Fees earned is a credit account, and I have further credited that with 18,600. 324,600 plus 18,600 will give you 343,200. And expenses, salaries and wages expense, starting was 193,370 plus another debit of 2,900, so that'll be 196,270. And utilities expense, there is no adjustments, so 42,375 is the adjusted total, the same one before adjustment. Similarly, advertising is 22,800, no adjustment, so we'll be taking the same amount. Repairs 17,250, we'll be taking the same amount. Miscellaneous expense, we'll be taking the same amount. And insurance expense, there is a debit of 1,800, so we'll be taking the same amount. Supply expense was 1,605, so that will be the same amount. And depreciation, building is 6,000, same amount in the adjusted column. Depreciation equipment 3,000, same amount. Rent revenue is a credit account on the credit side, 5,400. And salaries and wages payable is also a credit amount of 2,900. Now what we do is we check the arithmetical accuracy by adding the adjusted totals of the debit column. So if we add that, that is 39,305 on the debit side, and the credit side is also 39,305. And on the debit side of the adjusted amount, it is 780,500, and credit side is also 780,500. So those are the amounts and they equal, so therefore we have done it correctly. Now what we are going to do is, next thing that we are going to do is we are going to prepare the adjusted trial balance. So to prepare an adjusted trial balance, what I need is I need the worksheet that is just completed. So let's pull that worksheet. Yes, this is the worksheet that we have just done. So what we are going to do is, in the using the figures in the worksheet, uh, first I'm going to populate all my accounts. Okay, so that is what we are going to do first is we're going to populate all the accounts, and then we'll be, of course, we'll be using the figures available in the work completed worksheet to complete the adjusted trial balance. So let's write all the accounts serially. So that would be, first is the cash account, then I have accounts receivable, and then I have, if I've created any accounts down below, I need to insert them wherever they are supposed to fit in. I need to remember that there is a revenue account, and then liability account, and others are expenses. So that's how we'll do. Now accounts receivable, and then prepaid insurance, then supplies, then land, then building, then accumulated depreciation, building, and okay. Now what I'll do is I'll just copy them and paste them there. Accumulated, so equipment and accumulated depreciation. Then I have accounts payable, accounts payable. Till there I'm okay. Then after that I have a payable here, so I'll be creating salaries and wages payable. So that will be, and just to keep track that this is the amount that was added later on. We are just using a different font, and then I take the unearned rent, capital, fees earned up to there, because I have to make sure that I'm going to insert uh, the new accounts in their respective places. Under the fees earned, the rent revenue should come, and then I have all these expenses: salaries and wages expense, utilities, advertising. So I'll take them there. I'm leaving the miscellaneous expense because that's the last item that will come, and I can copy all these expenses from here and put them there as well. And the last item, of course, is going to be the miscellaneous expense item. Okay, now I have copied all my uh, new accounts are these, so I should be keeping track of them. Okay, so let me freeze this column. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put those figures in the respective columns. Cash was 7,500. Accounts receivable is 57,000. So I'm bringing these figures here from these columns into these figures here, debit and credit. So that's what we're doing. In case if you're doing your homework, you rather print out the worksheet and then complete that so that you don't miss the figures. Next is 5,400 is the insurance, and the supplies is 375, and then land is 112,500. Building is 150,250. Accumulated depreciation building is 93,550. So equipment account is an asset account, so that's 135,300. Then accumulated depreciation is 100,950. Accounts payable was 12,150. And then salaries and wages payable, I was 2,900. If you look at down there, this is salaries and wages payable. Here it is. This is 2,900. And then next is the unearned rent. Again, we are going back to the unearned rent. Unearned rent was 1,000 1,350 on the credit side. 1,350. Capital was 221,000 on the credit side. Drawings was a debit of 15,000. Fees earned we calculated to be 343,200. Rent revenue was 5,400. Salaries and wages expense was 196,270. Utilities expense was 42,375. Then advertising expense was 22,800, and repairs expense was 17,250. Insurance expense was down below, so that was the first item, 1,800. So that is 1,800. Next was supply expense was 1,605. Depreciation building was 6,000. Depreciation equipment was 3,000. And the miscellaneous expense was uh, that was already there. So miscellaneous was 6,075. 6,075. So what I did was I copied all the figures from here and put it here in the adjusted trial balance. So that is what you need to understand about how we prepare the adjusted trial balance. Now once I have prepared all these, what I'll do is I'll add the respective columns and make sure I get the same total, 780,500 and 780,500. So that is all that we do for this problem 3.5 A. And just to make sure that you understand how we do, we first do the journal, post these journals into the worksheet by marking them as A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever it is, and then put them in the respective columns, debit and credit, and then calculate the adjusted trial balance. Then you copy the adjusted trial balance into the adjusted trial balance format. This is the format that we'll have to use. So this is how you will be completing